Hello everyone, welcome to another Watch Me Do Math video. In today's video we're going to be interviewing Fontaine, who is a student of the IB HLAI, or Applications and Interpretations Maths course. And that's one of the alternatives to the more traditional AA, which is based more heavily around calculus than around the applications of the maths that you learn. And throughout this interview we're going to be investigating the differences between AI and AA, and we're going to be interviewing Fontaine about her experiences with the subject. If you are interested to see more of Fontaine's work,
if you're interested in biology,
you can go over to her blog at www.fontainegibbs.wordpress.com, or it's just fontainegibbs.wordpress.com. I think both should work, and see for yourself. So let's begin with the interview. If you're not familiar with the system, IB higher level has two options: analysis and approaches, or AA, and applications and interpretations, or AI. The first of which is supposedly around more abstract thinking and logic skills and analysis of functions, calculus, and so on, whereas AI delves into a lot more maths, which might not be considered typical for a school curriculum, but is still tough nonetheless, and centers on the applications of maths to the real world and the use of technology in figuring stuff out, basically. So, say hi.
hello.
Right, so what's your favorite topic in HLAI, which is what I'm going to refer to the subject as from now on? What's your favorite topic?
Oh, I have a thing that I think we should clear up first, is why I chose HLAI over HLAA. Because I very nearly chose HLAA. And the reason for that is because our teachers strongly encouraged us to take HLAA and not AI. But I ended up choosing AI because it was what I actually wanted to do. And that was because around the time when I chose my IB subjects, I knew that I wanted to go into biology or psychology and possibly academia. And both of those fields are fields where applications of maths and statistics are much more relevant. And I heard that statistics was a bigger component of AI, so it seemed to make more sense to learn maths that would be useful to my future career.
Right, that's fair. So a question about basically why you were doing this course was worth asking, and I forgot to include this in the list of interview questions. But anyway, so given that you've explained why you've chosen this subject, what have you found to be the most pleasing thing about it, or what's your favorite part of the course?
So your question initially was, what's your favorite topic? I think that's hard to say. I don't think I actually have a favorite one so far. The thing that I do like about the course is when questions combine different topics, or more challenging questions that tend to integrate different aspects of the course. And those are just fun to do because it's more satisfying and it's more of a realistic application to use different aspects of math.
Right, so you would say it's like sort of a thing that you like to be academically challenged or faced with difficult problems, or it's just the fact that mixing two things is more satisfying than doing two separate things?
I think, firstly, it's more challenging, which makes it more satisfying to get the right answer. And secondly, if it's an application that is challenging, then it's even more satisfying because then going through the tough work of solving the problem is useful.
Right, okay. So, that to the side for the time being. One part of AI is that there are no non-calculator assessments. A lot of the course is based around the use of technology to apply maths to a real-life situation. How has this increased use of technology manifested itself in the way you run the course, you learn the course, or the course is taught in school?
I think it hasn't made a huge difference. The thing is, because very little information has been released about HLAI yet, since it's a very new course, we don't know how exactly the tests will be marked. So my teacher has been teaching us as though it would be similar to a non-calculator test. We still need to understand how to do the working for every question and we still need to understand all of the concepts fully. Like, we can't just plug things into our calculator. But maybe in the real test, more of that will be allowed. So we don't know. I guess it hasn't made a huge impact, except it's nice to have a calculator on hand.
I see. Right. So that also to the side for the time being. What do you think are the hardest and easiest parts of the course in HLAI?
Well, as I said, the hardest are probably when the applications are quite complicated or topics are mixed. The easiest parts would be the SL parts of the course, but in our exams, I don't think they will test it in a SL way, if that makes sense. It will probably be integrated with HL parts of the course.
Naturally. Like SL part is naturally going to be the easiest part of the course, right?
I guess an example of easy SL stuff is financial maths. We do a very little bit of that, and that's basically just plugging it into your calculator once you know how to do it, unless they have a more complex application.
Yeah, that's fair. Financial maths and being where it applies to things like investment banking or simply being an actuary, where you deal with people's insurance claims and setting insurance prices and so on, are the main sort of like applied math jobs today. I've seen the syllabus, and in AA you only deal with the simple and compound interest formulas, but in AI you deal with somewhat more than that, so like returns on loans and stuff. Yeah.
But even that, I believe, is part of the SL course, or it is very easy.
Yeah, it is part of the SL course. I can confirm. I read the syllabus. So how have you found it compared to further pure maths? Because that's a focus of this channel, and a lot of people will be moving from that into deciding which IB higher level maths course to take.
I think it's been a fairly natural progression, because a lot of the skills I learned in further pure I applied to HLAI, and HLAI extends them a little bit. For example, calculus, people get the impression that there's no calculus in HLAI, but that's not true. We do pretty much all of the same topics as HLAA, except we spend more time and go into more depth with some topics. So it was useful to have the foundation of further pure, and HLAI topics are either an extension on those topics or something new but of higher difficulty.
Right. So it's November 2020 at the moment, which is about 3 months into the second academic year of the IB diploma. So how far along are you in the course, keeping in mind that we're in Hong Kong, which has had in total about 3 months-ish of online school, whereas the rest has been in person?
I think 5 months.
5 months? 5 months of online school. Right. How far along are you?
About 80%.
80% done. So you'll be done by like Christmas, January, February?
Yeah, and we are done with our IA completely as well.
Right, so the IA, that internal assessment, the sort of 12 to 20 page math exploration you know right up. Right, so now we get into some questions based on popular opinion. How heavy is HLAI on the statistics? Because a lot of, at least a lot of people have the impression that it is very heavy on that subject, which may not be a good thing for some people.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it has much less statistics than I expected as well. As I said earlier, I took the course because I thought it would apply to my career more. But actually, with what we've learned so far, I can't see the direct links to what I would be doing in the future yet. Then again, I really have no idea what sort of maths is exactly involved in biology or psychology, because I'm not there yet. It is not that heavy on statistics, but we have not done much of the statistics yet, because our teacher has left the HL components of statistics to just now, so we're only just starting.
Right, so I guess we'll see later how that actually ends up. Another perception that people often have of this course is that compared to analysis and approaches, you need to memorize quite a lot of stuff. Is that true?
I don't think so, because we get formula books, and so quite a lot of the important information you need is already in there. I think compared to Further Pure, I'm memorizing more or less the same amount of content, maybe a little bit more, but generally you do need to memorize a little bit, but beyond that it's just application or problem solving.
Right, so following on from that, how do you study it?
How do I study it? The funny thing is, when I first started HLAI, I was under the impression that it would be the hardest course I was taking, and I'd have to spend ages and ages on it. So I would do a lot of practice questions at the beginning of year 12. But as I settled into the course, I realized that it actually wasn't that much more demanding than my other subjects, so I spent a bit less time on it. Usually, if I have a test, I will make notes on the topics that are involved and just summarize all the formulas and solving styles I need to know. I don't think this is necessary, but it's just helpful for me to know what I need. And then I will do practice questions.
So how do you, what do you think of the existing resources that have been made by other people with the intent of helping those who are taking HLAI, given that so far it's such a new course and there are not many options available?
There are two textbooks that my class uses, the Oxford textbook and the HEAS textbook.
HASA, mathematics?
The HEAS textbook I think is a bit better because it's more in depth. It tends to have more explanation on theory. The Oxford textbook has several errors and sometimes glosses over things, but it has more challenging questions or questions that mix topics. So that is the strength of that book.
I see, yeah.
There's also a useful website called ibmaths.com, and it covers the HLAI syllabus and has videos on most of the topics, so that's useful in revision. But I think, generally speaking, with every single textbook, the questions are noticeably easier than the type of questions we get in the exam.
I see. Right, so yeah, whether to pronounce that book earlier, HASA or HEAS Mathematics, has been the topic of heated discussion, and I will just leave a link to the Amazon page where you can buy the book below, so you know which one we're referring to. So, what are your expectations for the exam? You just mentioned that the questions that you have seen so far are much harder than those in the textbook. What do you expect will happen in the real thing?
The thing is, we don't really know what to expect because there's only one specimen paper, one set of specimen papers, and that's it. And we haven't been allowed to do that yet because our teacher is saving it for when we've completed the course. However, I think judging from the tests we've done so far, our teacher has tried very hard to base it on the single specimen paper and the level of difficulty that's in there. I think the questions will be harder than those in the book for sure, and the questions are usually quite long form, so you will do a lot of different steps in the question and combine topics.
That kind of feels like IB HL chemistry to me, the many steps, or would you say it's not so?
Yeah, I guess that's a good analogy.
Because HL chemistry is quite infamous for having, even though it's just a 135 mark paper, there's a few questions which would be 30 plus marks long, and you apply basically tools for many units of your learning to get to some chemical conclusion.
Yeah.
Would you say it's like that in HLAI?
I think the only difference is that in HLAI long question, if you get stuck on a certain part, it's much more detrimental to the rest of the question. Whereas in chemistry, even though it's like a long chain of questions, you can still kind of do them separately.
Right.
But that's less possible with maths.
Yeah. So do you feel as if what you learn is useful?
Yes, I think so, because in every part of the course we talk about some application or our teacher tells us about it. But as I said earlier, I'm not sure if everything directly applies to what I want to do in the future.
Right, right. Yeah, because I know for me personally, sometimes the like abstract math gets a little. It feels like you're not doing anything useful beyond sort of the logic training that it provides.
Mm-hmm.
So the question of whether it feels like you're doing something useful for maths is quite an
Yeah.
important one.
Yeah, I think that is a strength of HLAI. They take topics that you wouldn't really expect to do applications with, like complex numbers, to do an application. Like we use complex numbers to model waves.
Right. Yeah, so I suppose like that's a kind of thing that depends from person to person, wouldn't it? Like if you are someone who is unsatisfied with just the pure logic training that HLAA provides, or then you may find HLAI more satisfying, but it can also definitely go the other way if you think word problems are just like I don't know. I to some extent think this. If
We don't do that.
I know, but like word problems, those kinds of questions, like I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but if you find the logic training, like the pure maths, more satisfying, then I suppose it goes the other way as well, because that would be a discourager to take HLAI versus an encourager if you do like it. So, what do you think about the reputation that HLAI has for being easier than the other course, easier than HLAI? And would you care to comment on your experience with how universities see the two courses?
Right. So being easier than AA, I can't really make a valid comment on that because I haven't taken HLAA. I've definitely heard about the reputation for that, and I think maybe it's slightly easier than HLAA, but it's quite hard to compare because both courses focus on different things.
Yeah.
And those might suit different types of students. Comments on universities. That has been quite frustrating for me. Some universities, for degrees like chemistry, physics, maths, engineering, don't accept HLAI in the UK. And so I actually had to change one of my university choices because of that. But for the most part, if you're not doing something that involves pure maths and calculus, then it doesn't matter which one you take. It's important to check all of the universities you're interested in when you're choosing your course to make sure that they do accept HLAI. And actually, this is something I tried to do, but because the course was so new, all these statements about what was accepted or not came out much later, after I chose my course. Another thing is it depends on the university. So if you find out when you've already started the course that your university of choice doesn't accept HLAI, some still do. Like I think for UCL, most courses accept HLAI, and Oxford, every course except chemistry does.
I see. Every course except chemistry. That's... I don't know. I wouldn't have expected that. Yeah. Well, chemistry does have like it has higher entrance requirements than like the ones surrounding it, like physics, biology, engineering, maths, etc. Yeah.
I see.
So like.
I think also maybe to do with testing, because like if you're applying for a maths course that Oxford, they will make you do aptitude test in maths, but maybe they don't have that for chemistry, so they want you to take HLAA.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so moving on from that, in what circumstances, given that universities have all these differing opinions about the course, in what circumstances would you recommend someone to take HLAI over any other math course?
I would recommend it if you enjoy maths, and if you want to take a course or career path that involves some maths, but maths isn't the focus. For example, biology with me. And if your universities of choice and your courses of choice accept the course.
Right.
Also, I think look at the existing resources. Like, look at the HLAI versus HLAA textbooks and exam questions, because you might find that one style is more suitable to you, or you're more used to one style of teaching.
Yeah. So, on teaching, how important do you think a good teacher is if you want to learn HLAI compared to your other subjects? Like, is it essential, or can you do fine with just the textbook?
Is it essential? I guess you could learn all of the syllabus points pretty much on your own. But as I said, the exam questions are a lot harder than the book. And if you just understand the principles themselves, you might not be able to do well in the exam because you don't understand them fully enough. And I'm very lucky to have a very good HLAI teacher. He teaches all of the concepts very in depth and explains them fully. Even though proofs of most of the equations we learn aren't required, he shows them to us anyways and has us do them, because it's good to have that deeper understanding of the concepts so that we can do our working in a way that shows that and apply our understanding of it better.
Props to your math teacher then, because I agree with that way of teaching maths content. So a big part of IB maths courses is the internal assessment, which is worth 20% of your grade. What was writing your IA like? Was it different to how you expected it would go? Were there any things specific to HLAI that kind of frustrated you or made you enjoy the process more?
I think the IA is what I struggled with most. Not necessarily because of the maths content in it, but finding a suitable topic to do was quite challenging to me, because that's very important and you can't get it wrong, because the level of maths in your IA needs to be commensurate to the level of maths in the course. And it's hard to find topics that directly relate to the maths in the course. Or actually, I don't think it's hard to find projects that relate to the maths in the course, but it was hard to find one that I was interested in and related to biology. So I actually spent much longer on my IA than I expected. I think this is not really the course's issue, though. It's more of how I approached it, because when I was finding topics for my IA, I would look a lot into the theory behind the topic that I wanted to do and establish an introduction and everything first. And then by the time I'd get to actually doing the maths, I'd realize either this is too hard, this doesn't involve things relevant to the course, or this isn't appropriate to the level of the course.
Yeah.
So if you are doing an IA, just get down to doing the maths component and make sure you can do that at an appropriate level, because every other aspect of the IA, like personal engagement, communication, you can apply that to any topic, but once the topic is way out of what's appropriate, then you're stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so that's quite interesting. You did your IA to do with coronavirus, which is one of the hot topics of today in terms of statistical modeling and so on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I ended up being quite happy with my topic, but it did take a long time, and I think it's more words than my EE.
Yeah, that's another thing. The 10 hours for IA, that's most definitely a lie.
Yeah, and I would think it's the same for HLAA as well, because
Yeah.
the level of maths that is expected for a HL Maths IA is quite high.
Yeah. It'll definitely take you more than 10 hours of work on your IA if you want to go to 7, contrary to what the syllabus states. But anyway. So,
I guess so. I think there are some loopholes. There is one friend from my class who did graph theory IA, and I think it definitely took them over 10 hours, but not significantly more, and they still did well. But graph theory is one of the funny topics in HLAI that is just quite tedious and not super maths involved, but
it's
still
more of
considered a HL part of the course.
Yeah, it's more of a it's considered very mathematical generally, but it's going to feel a lot more like computer science because that's where most of the application is. Yeah. So beyond the fact that you need to focus down very heavily on the actual maths involved when writing your IA, you shouldn't get led astray. How do you think HLAI synergizes with your other subjects, given that you were someone who wanted to apply it to biology/psychology as you move forward?
I don't think it makes a huge difference to my other subjects because the IB course is designed in a way where even if you take SLAA or SLAI, all of the other courses are accessible to you.
Which I think is stupid, but that's for another video.
I think that it has a little bit of overlap with biology, some of the statistics methods that we learn in biology. I don't know whether we're tested on them, but we have learned them for our IAs, are relevant to HLAI, so that's really nice to see. And also chemistry, I think SLAA level understanding of maths will be fine for chemistry.
Yeah. I think in the physics world of physics, HLAI is definitely more than enough that you need to do the IB Physics HL course. SLAA is probably the minimum. I don't know if you'd want to do HL Physics with SLAI Mathematics. It's still possible, of course, but it's harder. And my physics teacher complains a lot about this requirement because it means that when you go into some of the topics that the math is more advanced, like we just can't do any of it in the class because the IB is assuming that everyone taking it has the minimum mathematical requirements. So there isn't much beyond can you use a square root, which most people can. So yeah, I think that's it for the interview. I don't have anything more I want to ask or say.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this interview, be sure to leave a comment telling me what else you'd like to hear from the people I have the ability to interview. And until next time, thanks for watching.